1. I despise weekends. And weeding season. It's been a cluster of a few weeks. Every night we have been sold out or close to it due to hosting a large state-GIF group on weekdays and 2 to 4 weddings every weekend. This has been going on for about a month now and I am drained. My usually laughably easy job of babysitting an empty building has turned into a hellstorm of drunks, asinine requests, and snowflakes. All of this reached a climax last night when I had a gem of a snowflake check-in. She ignored my greeting, and when I asked if she was checking in she simply stated her name and stared at me. Like WTF, are you checking in, asking for room keys, waiting for applause in appreciation that you know your own name, what? I pull up her rees and I see it is for tonight. I ask her for ID and CC and she only hands me her ID, of course. I have to ask her 3 more times for the card before she scoffs and slams it down on the counter. It's a totally different card than what we have on file, but whatever, it is in her name at least and it doesn't decline. I then go to confirm with her the room type and length of stay and begin my spiel about Wi-Fi and breakfast when she interrupts me. She says that she only needs 1 night for this reservation as she has a second reservation for tomorrow night that is prepaid. I rewind myself and click open her rees again to see she has a promo rate for a 2-night minimum stay. I inform her of this and the fact that we cannot honor that rate if she only stays for 1 night. She then condescendingly repeats herself about having a prepaid for the next night. I tell her that since the second night is through a third party it doesn't count, and that if she shortens her current reservation for only the 1 night she would be charged our rack rate. She huffs. She puffs. She sees it has no effect and says,
"Fine, well, can you at least keep me in the same room both night?"
I tell her that depends on what room type the prepaid rees is for and that third parties tend to fill our handicap accessible rooms first, and if that is what they did then she would have to move as I would not change it to non-accessible. I could, but I didn't want to because she was a bitch. I look up the rees by last name and wouldn't you know it, it doesn't exist. I let her know that I have nothing under her name and ask if it could possibly be under a relative's name or different spelling. She says of course not, she made it online under her own name and knows how to spell her own name. She said the last bit with challenge in her eyes. I ask her who she booked it through and tell her that since I don't have it she will have to contact them and either get a refund or figure out what the hell went wrong. I see a light bulb turn on above her head and she says,
"I have a confirmation number,"
and proceeds to pull out a crumbled up corner of notebook paper with a 14 or so digit long number hastily scrawled across. I let her know that this is the confirmation number from whatever booking site she used and that it does nothing for me. She demands I type it into my system. I tell her that our confirmation numbers are only 8 digits long. She tells me to do it anyway. It doesn't work. I tell her that if she could remember who she booked through I could give her their number and she would then have a use for that number. Apparently this was too much for her to understand as she then began to say over and over again,
"But I already paid."
Just for the hell of it I decide to look up all the arrivals for the next day to see if she did in fact misspell her own name when making this reservation. Guess what? She did. With utter satisfaction I turned to her and let her know that I did find her reservation for tomorrow. She smirks and says,
"Well, about time. I told you I already paid for it."
"Yes, you did. Unfortunately you did misspell your name, which is why I was unable to initially locate it. Here are your keys. Please check out by noon tomorrow and you may check in with your other reservation at 3 o'clock. Have a nice night." She lets out a high-pitched gasp, stammers something about having to get ready for a wedding, visibly begins to shake, and storms off. 2. The Fireman and the Lady Massager, NSFW. Our little town is hosting a fire chiefs conference at a nearby casino, and so we have a large group of them staying at our hotel. About 30 minutes after starting my shift, I have 3 of these gentlemen approach me. One has a huge smile on his face, another can't stop laughing and is hanging back from the other 2, and the third is obviously embarrassed. Mr. Smiles says to me,
"So we talked to the kid at the desk earlier. We are the guys who found the thong when we unfolded our pull-out sofa."
The embarrassed-looking guy's face starts to turn red. I'm surprised that my coworker didn't say anything to me about this, but he was telling me about how he is considering putting his 2 weeks notice in, so I can see why it would slip his mind. I say to Mr. Smiles, "I'm so sorry. He didn't mention this to me, but what can I do to remedy the situation?" Mr. Smiles turns to his friend who is still hanging back and can't stop giggling before saying to me,
"Well, he already took care of that, gave us new sheets and even made up the pull-out for us. Thing is, when I went to move some things off my bed, my foot hit something underneath."
His smile deepens, but he tries to cover his mouth. He also starts speaking more quietly as an elderly woman is passing by on her way to the elevator, so I didn't catch everything that he said. I ask him to repeat himself.
"I went to move some things off my bed when my foot hit something underneath. I got on the floor to see what it was and there was a dildo staring at me in the face."
The friend in the back lets out a roar of laughter and the embarrassed friend is bright red, staring around wildly like he wished to be literally anywhere else. I try to keep my composure, but it is too much. I laugh right along with Mr. Giggles, if not as loud, and when I calm down I share a grin with Mr. Smiles himself. I apologize and offer to move them. I have no idea what else housekeeping left in that room, and they graciously accept. I make them new keys and tell them to just call down once they are all moved so I can take pictures for my boss. As soon as I put the keys on the counter, the embarrassed friend scoops them up and runs up the stairwell. Smiles and Giggles are a little surprised but just laugh about it as they wait for the elevator. 3. Childhood is just a frame of mind. Or BAC. BAC meaning blood alcohol content. Setting, 80-room hotel, Independence Day weekend, 2 a.m. I chill in the back of the office on weekends or whenever we are busy, since I work completely alone as full-time NA, no one can see me there and I can set up my laptop right next to the camera displays. Also, people are way less likely to ask you for something if they don't know you are there. It was a shitty night. I had 7 noise complaints already, 20-something-year-old guys having foot races on 2nd floor, someone on 3rd with their door wide open whilst blasting country music at 1 a.m., girl crying/screaming into her phone outside of open windows, and a bunch of my favorite type of noise complaint, someone closed their door too loudly. Top it all off with a couple guests bitching about fireworks going off like a mile away, like I can do something about that, and having to call Expedia about a declining CC. It was a shitty night. I'm sitting at my makeshift desk in the back, card table and a couple of boxes filled with audit packets, when I see a cab pull up on the cameras. I pause Netflix and watch as 3 30-something-year-old women stumble out and wave goodbye to the taxi driver. Instead of walking in and quietly going to their rooms, they decide to chain smoke. Loudly. I can hear them through 2 glass sets of doors as well as 1 wall. I should have gone out and asked them to keep it down, but I had enough at this point in my night and said fuck it, I'm only going to deal with it if someone complains. I unpause Netflix and try to enjoy my show, but they don't shut up. I could either do something else or turn up my laptop's volume to the point where it would exacerbate my headache. I went with option A and headed to our breakfast area to get a head start on setting things up. I got a fair amount done before I heard the doors open, paired with the sounds of the 3 drunk women. I kept doing what I was doing out of their line of sight in the kitchen area, but I didn't hear them move any further than our mudroom/luggage cart area, which is the room between the 2 sets of glass doors. I debated poking my head out to see what they were up to, but they're not teenagers or even in their 20s, they are full-fledged adults, and if they needed me they could ring the bell. I then heard the sound of one of the luggage carts being moved and figured they were just trying to get to the pamphlets behind them. I knew better and I could almost feel what they are about to do, but I was having a terrible night and this was the last thing I needed. The women then started to whoop and yell and I could hear the luggage cart moving again. I decide I have to do something at this point, so I walk out of the kitchen area and see one woman sitting upside down so that her head was touching the floor and her bare feet were pressing against the window behind the chair. She's wearing a dress and it has half fallen downwards with her panties clearly visible and she is texting or taking selfies or something on her phone like this. Another woman is standing on one of our luggage racks holding on to the sidebars trying to keep her balance as the third woman is trying to push her down the hallway. I step out from the shadows. I hadn't turned on the breakfast area lights yet, just before the two women on the cart would have passed me and started picking up speed. I'm a big guy and they weren't going fast yet, so I simply put my hand out and grabbed the side rail of the cart. It stopped immediately and surprised the shit out of the two women. The one on the cart stumbled off and almost fell while the other just stared at me with her mouth open. The woman on the chair still hadn't noticed me, so I loudly cleared my throat. She tried to cover herself and get up at the same time and did fall. All three recover and group together trying to explain or apologize at the same time. I stay silent and wait for them to stop. They all look worried now, and the woman who was in the chair was pretty red in the face. I'm sure my stare was thunderbolts and I had startled them quite badly just popping up like that. Add the fact that I'm a large bearded man and hadn't said a word yet, I'm sure they were terrified. In almost a whisper I say, "Please go to your room and keep quiet." They scuttle into the elevator and off they go. I follow after they get off and catch sight of them hurrying through their door as I look down the hallway. Just to boost my spirits I stopped and listened at their door on my next walk around about 30 minutes later. Dead silence,